Welcome back. It is episode 170, 248. And I am your host, Jacob Harris.
Walsh.
This is All or Nothing, our little segment. You know what it is if you're listening. Today we are going to be talking about cholesterol. We're going to be talking about fibre, talking about how they interact with each other. We're also going to talk a little bit about GH. Connor's going to talk about GH. I'm going to listen. GH peptides, is that more accurate?
Yeah, GH peptides, the GH apocalypse backup stack.
Got to have backup. Got to have a backup stack. Can you ever so slightly kind of move into the center of the frame a little bit more, like just to your right? Your right. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Just too big, bro. Can barely fit in the frame. We're going to start off by talking about fibre. Fibre is always fun to talk about. I did it a little bit in my nutrition seminar a little while ago, and you just always come back to obviously talking about poo because like it's obviously important for gut health and things like that. But like the more probably noticeable experiences that we will all have is generally when we have not enough fibre, too much fibre. That's when we'll kind of have that experience, and we'll kind of go like, oh, I've had too much of that thing. Or I haven't had enough of that thing. I always mess it up, so I've got my little notes here as usual. But so you got your obviously dietary fiber, is what I just referred to. Soluble and insoluble. I'm just going to read it because I always get it mixed up. But soluble is what's going to keep the stool together. Is that correct?
Yeah. So soluble will draw fluid into the GI tract and kind of gel and form kind of a gel-like substance. I don't know if you've ever put psyllium husk in a cup. That's exactly what it does in your stomach.
Right. Okay. And then insoluble is what creates like smoothness. Is that right?
Sort
like
of. It's matter. Yep. It doesn't get digested. It acts as kind of like it kind of gets referred to as a sweeping brush. Goes through and kind of cleans up and does, as you say, act as a bit of a softener for the stool.
I use the word smoothness because
bulker.
We're talking about poo, so I just like to use that word. But of course, it isn't probably the most accurate. But as you can tell, they both obviously play a pretty big role in going to the toilet because if we don't have too much of one or too much of the other one. Now that we've covered that, there's some other little ones that we can cover as well. And I'm still learning about things like probiotic and prebiotic fiber. So maybe you could expand.
So prebiotic fiber is just a type of fiber that is able to effectively feed probiotics or bacteria in the gut. They can be in both forms of soluble and insoluble. You also have a third. It's not really a fiber, but it kind of is. It's a regular carbohydrate called resistant starch, which then becomes partially undigestible and does the same kind of thing in terms of feeding the bacteria in your gut as prebiotic fibers do. Be classed as a kind of a prebiotic fiber without necessarily being a fiber.
Just learnt recently about resistant starch. It's an interesting one. It's kind of a thing, but then not a thing. It's like one of those ones where it's like kind of can do a thing to act like the other thing, but then isn't the other thing. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Then you have these other forms of, I don't know if you call them artificial fiber. Would you call them artificial fiber? Things like, I don't know if they're artificial fiber, but like, we had a conversation about this, you and me, once with the Fro Pro pizzas because they put, is it wheat fiber in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it? I wouldn't. It's not a naturally occurring fiber, right? They're kind of forcing it into it.
It's a refined fiber. It's wheat, and the fiber portion of the wheat is refined out of it. It is one that I find to be more prone to digestive issues with people, especially in excess. I do believe it's a lot heavier in terms of insoluble fiber or insoluble fiber. At the end of the day, there is a balancing, as we've talked about in many other episodes, but with soluble and insoluble fiber, it's another thing. It's a bit of a balancing act. If you have too much of one, you're going to end up with some digestive issues. For example, if you go too hard on soluble fiber, you're going to draw too much fluid into your stomach. That's where you get your bloating and stuff of that nature that tends to occur.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're like me and you were deep in the cut and decided to ignore Whole Foods and have a Fro Pro pizza, then follow it up with some of those little smart sweets that you get from the shops. Those little like smart, yeah, that's when you're like 40 grams of just refined fiber, just, and then you're like, I've farted 14 times in the last 60 seconds. That's probably not a great thing. But too late now, right? Done worse stuff to my body, so is what it is. I feel like I'm missing. Is there one or two that I'm missing? Or is that pretty much it?
That covers your main fiber types. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. LDL cholesterol is probably the one to start with. We're going to talk about cholesterol, but LDL is like the one everyone's talking about on Instagram. It's the quotation marks bad cholesterol. But I've heard you expand on this before as well, and kind of not say that it's not necessarily always bad. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, look, in general case, it's bad. It's the main form of atherosclerotic or ApoB containing cholesterol. So ApoB are all the forms of cholesterol that are able to come bound to an artery wall and begin forming calcium plaque formation. LDL makes up the majority of ApoB containing particles in your body. Look, our body works as a balancing ecosystem. LDL is supposed to be there. It's not necessarily that it's bad, but having it in excessive levels does tend to have a pretty significant increase in your risk factor of primarily things like atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease.
Right. Okay. So what about cholesterol overall? This is one thing I'm still learning about. So I kind of like was under the impression that to an extent there's a regulation within our body when it comes to cholesterol, in the sense that, like, for instance, right, like if I was to have 5 eggs, right, which would be too much cholesterol on my tracking app, why is it that I don't then have high cholesterol immediately?
Because again, how we just talked about with the sodium and potassium and magnesium and calcium, your body has ways of managing it through altering intestinal absorption, and the majority of the cholesterol that actually ends up in our system is produced from the liver. The liver produces the majority of the cholesterol. That's why drugs like statins are so effective at reducing cholesterol levels, because they actually target cholesterol metabolism in the liver directly.
Interesting. But we talked about this the other day. The cholesterol, at least in your experience, or I think probably just in most cases, is highly genetic. You would
highly
say
genetic for multiple factors. One, the serum level itself, as in, like, you'll see familial hypercholesterolemia. If you've worked with people from the same family, you'll often see cholesterol issues from mum, cholesterol issues from kid or dad, whatever. That's definitely one aspect that makes it highly genetic. The second portion of it is response to dietary cholesterol. I personally, and I've done this, I've tried doing a keto-style diet with very, very high cholesterol. I was younger when I was doing this. I was eating bacons, cheeses, eggs, lots of saturated fat. My LDL didn't budge. However, the genetic variance to response to a high cholesterol diet is quite large, and you'll see people, particularly now you're seeing with carnivore crowds where they're doing bloods, some of them aren't too bad, and then some of them are absolutely fucked. So it's, both of them are consuming the same diet, but you have two totally varying responses to that same dietary intake.
interesting how that works. Kind of almost demotivating, right? Like, kind of fucks you up and goes, well, like, fuck, if my cholesterol's bad, what do I even do then? Just get over it because it's bad genetically.
No, there's still things you can do for sure. Having said that, if it is in certain ranges, medication is going to be most likely a required part of that treatment.
What kind of medication do they put you on for cholesterol?
Typically, statins are often first-line use when going through GPs. It's not an approach I personally take. I would prefer to see someone use something like ezetimibe, which impacts gut cholesterol absorption. It has generally it's less effective, but it also has a lower chance of side effects. And then statin use, again, being the primary form or class of drugs that is used. Again, if I was to be kind of playing a part with a doctor in controlling a client's cholesterol, I typically think they are quite overdosed. If you look at the research on rosuvastatin specifically, at the 5 milligram dose achieves, I can't remember exactly the number, but it's like 80% of the same reduction in cholesterol levels as the maximum 40 milligram. So my approach to that is if someone did get to the point where they need a statin, would be a little bit of polypharmacy where you're able to keep the statin dose at that very bottom end of 5 milligrams or whatever it is for your different forms of statin, and then use something like ezetimibe, and alongside obviously dietary and lifestyle changes as well.
Are there quite significant side effects from statins? I've only really heard about them.
It can be. The most common issue people run into is muscle pain. Because it does impact liver metabolism, there can be some skewing in liver function. It is a slightly more side effect prone drug class.
And then what was the drug you mentioned?
Ezetimibe.
Yeah. What about that?
Almost entirely benign. I've never heard of anyone have a side effect from it, but it's always a possibility with all drugs.
So why the fuck wouldn't you just do that though, surely?
Yeah. I don't know what the costing is like. Statins have been around for a long time. I'm going to guess that it's probably cheaper to prescribe statins, particularly in Australia where the government pays for cholesterol medications on the PBS. That would be my primary guess, to be completely honest. And also just old school mentality. Statins have been around longer. That's what a lot of doctors are just more comfortable with. So,
is there an improvement to the point where you can then stop using them, or are we talking about like a lifelong?
If you're talking about genetic familial hypercholesterolemia, it's typically you're going to be on it lifelong. Having said that, the aggressiveness of treatment is often able to be reduced pretty significantly once you've got everything else in line, like lifestyle factors and whatnot as well.
Yeah. Okay. So there's still option for reduction in overall.
So if someone's like really bad, maybe there is like warrant in going straight to one of the high doses of a statin. But the goal would not be to stay on that maximum dose forever. It would be to get things under control, get lifestyle factors moving in the right direction, and gradually taper the statin down as things improve.
Speaking of lifestyle factors, these are one of the things that we talked about. I have read this before, but unlike you, I cannot memorize multiple paragraphs from a 143-page study randomly. I can tell you word for word the entire scene from Terminator, but that's probably not as useful.
Yeah.
The soluble fiber is a helpful tool against lowering cholesterol. Is that right?
Soluble. Yes. So both fiber types, insoluble and soluble, have some evidence backing a reduction in LDL cholesterol specifically. But soluble fiber has significantly more data showing its reduction in cholesterol, particularly LDL. There's a few mechanisms of action, one being with improved enterohepatic circulation and clearance. Second, I believe, has to do a little bit with bile acid production in the liver, in helping with the binding and excretion of cholesterol that way. I'm sure there's probably a few other small bits and pieces. The blood glucose management portion, obviously fiber is well shown to improve insulin sensitivity and blood glucose management. That does have an impact in the way the liver produces cholesterol as well. So that will be one portion as to why it helps us there as well.
Right. Are there any other lifestyle factors that you would manage? I mean, other than just eating healthier, right? But are there some specific things that someone should be taking into account?
Cardiovascular exercise, I think, is a very important one, and doing so through a range of intensities to basically improve your body's ability to be substrate flexible, to be able to go from using glucose and lipid as fat quite easily and interchangeably. So maybe doing something like 1 HIIT session a week and maybe 2 to 3 zone 2 sessions, I think is something that definitely makes a pretty notable difference. Reducing saturated fat intake in place for more poly and monounsaturated fats is definitely another thing to go for in terms of dietary interventions. In an ideal world, something in the nature of about 1-to-1 saturated to polyunsaturated, and then about twice the amount of monounsaturated. Even you probably go a little bit higher on the polyunsaturated as well.
PedTest Australia is a WA-based company providing at-home testing kits for a range of black market substances, underground or counterfeit drugs that can often contain a different substance than what they claim, or nothing at all. In 2024, 5% of oil-based steroids contained no active ingredient. Oral steroids were even worse, 12% contained no active ingredient. PedTest Australia kits provide a quick and cost-effective method of screening products before they are used. Kit results help users make informed decisions about substances they choose to take and therefore reduce the risks they are exposed to. Don't take chances with your health and gains. Test it before you take it. Go to pedtestaustralia.com to order your test kits. Bulk Gym Chalk Australia are your go-to suppliers for gym chalk. Whether you are doing powerlifting, weightlifting, strongman, gymnastics, or running a competition event and need bulk supplies and prizes, they've got you covered. Options include block chalk, bowl chalk, liquid chalk, or invisible liquid chalk for those gyms where you aren't allowed other options. They even have a range of athlete recovery bath salts to soak those training aches away. Check out the range at www.bulkgymchalk.com.au.
But within bodybuilding diets specifically, that can be a little bit more difficult to do.
Right. Yeah, it can be. It can be a pain. So overall, varied fiber good. All right. Make sure you get enough soluble and insoluble fiber to make sure that you're pooing right. Get some prebiotic in there as well. That's the good stuff.
Sure, yes.
That's always helpful.
That would be one that you would ideally pair if you're consuming something like a kefir or any kind of dietary form of probiotic. You would be best pairing that with your prebiotic fibers then.
Every morning I've shown it last episode. I have a kefir ball with some Greek yogurt, and then I put some kiwi fruit, some raspberries. Raspberries are a favorite fiber of mine just because.
Very good fiber source, underrated.
Yeah, very underrated, right? Like I think it's like 11, 12 grams per punnet, which is
fiber,
super high. And as Connor said, that kind of covers both bases, right? Like it's the thing is with a lot of time when people like this, they go like, I've got to do this and this and this and this. Like if you actually just make one solid meal, a lot of the time you can kind of tick a lot of those boxes in one go. 100%. You don't have to like be crazy about it all day. Kiwi fruits, one of the best things. Kiwi fruits
are great. Chia seed, flaxseed, they're both great prebiotic fibers that most people are going to have in their cupboard. Also going to improve your poly and monounsaturated fat intake. You get plenty of polyunsaturated fat there. Increase your omega-3 intake. All of these things will improve lipid panels.
Absolutely. So the other, just quickly mention it, so your LDL cholesterol, HDL?
Yep, just so you get low density and then high density lipoprotein.
Yeah, right, okay. Basically just, I guess we've sort of covered what they are, what they do, and how they interact. So there's probably not tons to say more on that. But I guess it's all the same picture, right? It's like if there's an issue and drugs aren't the direction that you're going to go in, which if they were, would be the two that you had mentioned, which is one that's a little bit more conventional, one that's maybe not as conventional, but could possibly, harbor less side effects.
There are actually newer drugs that are available and probably even better now as well. They're just much more difficult to get prescribed.
Right. Yeah. They're on the statin train. Do you want to? Do you know the names of any of the drugs? If we don't mention it, someone's gonna be like, "Why didn't they say it?"
So the class is PCSK9 inhibitors. I think Repatha would be the most common. It's been a while since I've looked up on this. I'm pretty sure Repatha would be the most common of the PCSK9 inhibitors. And yeah, that's, I believe, similar in terms of effectiveness for cholesterol reduction as the statins without impacting anything to do with liver metabolism directly. I don't remember the ins and outs of the drugs. It's probably been 2 years since I did my research on this. If people are interested in it, I'm happy to go over it again, but it's probably not very applicable to most people.
There you go.
yet. Maybe later.
Maybe later. Eat healthier. That's eat healthier and train is the overall. It's the same answers that people never really want to hear because in 90% of cases,
don't smoke.
Yeah, don't live like a fucking FIFO worker on their off swing constantly, and then you'll probably be all right. No shade to FIFO workers, but I think we knew what I was saying.
Someone's got to do it.
Is there a GH shortage at the moment?
Well, the word coming out of China is that there's either not any more being produced from China, or there's going to be a lot less that is going to be getting made, or at least exported on the non-pharmaceutical market anyway. Wait and see what happens, but they're the rumours at the moment. I will say things have been looking a bit more expensive domestically, so it's definitely seems some merit to those rumours.
If only we could give growth hormone, and then it could just grow, and then you'd have even more of it, right? Like it's actually quite ironic.
Very ironic.
You know, it's a shame. What you said there are some peptides, or you've mentioned there are some peptides that we could possibly look into that would. They're not going to obviously mimic growth hormone to that extent because growth hormone, but would they help increase your growth hormone?
Yep, for sure. I'll just get my potassium, probably help increase my growth hormone a little bit.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things about the last video I edited of Connor is that I'm sure he would have an absolute huge defensive case for it, but I just can't not laugh at it and always think it's hilarious. But if you saw the last video on the leg extension, he had a little intra leg extension carbs. He had one of those little gels halfway through a set of leg extensions just because there's no possible way that he would have been able to finish those leg extensions without those intra carbs.
No, it was between two sessions, and I was starting to go hypo, mate. I had to control my blood glucose.
Yeah, that's fair. That's what I'm saying. That's my point. Sorry, continue.
I can't even remember what it was.
So the growth hormone. So you're saying that these peptides will increase? Would they increase your growth hormone, or are they literally going to? Because obviously, if they're not growth hormone, they're not growth hormone. It's simple. You're not supplementing that. Are they going to increase what's already in your body?
Yeah, so these are primarily just going to signal to your pituitary that it either needs to produce or release more growth hormone. I will start this segment off by saying that there is almost no circumstance other than GH from China either being unreasonably expensive or not available where I would choose the peptide route over exogenous growth hormone. Especially maybe in an anti-aging setting if money isn't a problem. But outside of that, if anything from the performance enhancing setting, I would always go for the real thing. Primary reason there being, obviously, you with peptides and natural secretagogues, you're always going to be limited to whatever your pituitary is actually capable of producing and then releasing. With exogenous growth hormone, you can take as much growth hormone as your wallet will allow you to take. With that in mind, kind of if you were to max things out, your results are going to be different person to person. If someone's got a very active pituitary, they may see more results from the peptide versus someone who doesn't. Often older people, I think, would be less likely to see as much of an increase purely because they likely have a less effective pituitary at that point. I think at best case scenario, you might be getting somewhere in the 3 to at very most 5 units kind of worth of growth hormones in terms of results. There's a few classes that you're going to want to look at in order to maximize your natural production. The first one is going to be a growth hormone releasing hormone of some sort. This primarily is going to signal to the pituitary that it needs to growth hormone releasing peptide. This is growth hormone. Yep. So sorry, I've got the abbreviations mixed up. I had to confirm myself there. But so a growth hormone releasing hormone is going to tell the pituitary that it needs to produce more growth hormone. Producing more growth hormone doesn't mean there's more growth hormone in your system or in serum. That's having physiological impact. That's just basically filling up the tank. The next class of drug that you're going to need to include to get those serum levels up now that your pituitary has produced more growth hormone is a growth hormone releasing peptide. This now is going to tell the pituitary that it needs to release the growth hormone that it has produced as a result from the growth hormone releasing hormone. And now it ends up in your bloodstream, and this is where it's going to be able to have a physiological impact on things like increased lipolysis and increasing IGF-1 production in the liver. A third and fourth area that you're probably going to want to look into is somatostatin, which is basically a negative feedback hormone that kind of tells your pituitary that it doesn't need to produce. There's other hormones that it controls as well. But today we're just talking about growth hormone, that it doesn't need to produce as much growth hormone. So there are a few supplements that you could possibly look into. This is lesser researched, but I believe there's a little bit of research backing that choline may have some somatostatin inhibiting properties, which is then obviously going to allow your body to be able to produce more growth hormone through that pathway. The other thing to look at is then going to be insulin levels. Obviously, growth hormone and insulin tend to work inversely. Rarely is your pituitary going to pulse any notable amount of growth hormone when insulin's at high levels. So if you're using these peptides, they're typically going to be used in times where insulin levels are going to be low, between meals, before meals, stuff like that.
So you're mentioning, I'm just from what I got from that, just mentioning the choline as well, given that this is just more so that you would focus on trying to ensure that while this is happening, or just in general, that you're consuming meals that are high in choline. That's not something you would ever supplement with that I'm aware of, is it? Or
yeah, I'd probably just go with something like alpha GPC if you want to do that. Your main thing for controlling somatostatin levels is going to be good sleep. So the other things that help with sleep are also probably going to help there pretty significantly as well. But yeah, alpha GPC, I think even huperzine, which acts as, I believe, a choline donor, was one of the ones that was pretty popular back in the day that people used to swear by in the forums. Gave them that little bit of extra growth hormone production and IGF-1 versus without it. So
big growth, that's hard to measure though, right? Because it's like, when you get growth hormone taken, right? Like you do a blood test and it comes up with growth hormone. It's not we've talked about this before. It's not very accurate, right? It can fluctuate a lot naturally.
Yes, but if you are taking the growth hormone releasing peptide, for example, you're telling your body when the pulse is going to happen. So you are going to be able to kind of time a pulse if you want. But the main way they would be looking at is using liver IGF-1 or serum IGF-1 levels as a proxy to growth hormone. Again, not always the best proxy, but it's at least something you can sort of go off.
Right. So can we list that quickly just for someone again as well? So first up, growth peptides can be useful. That was obviously the first thing we started talking about. What are the names of some of those?
All right. So for growth hormone releasing hormone peptides, your main ones are going to be CJC 1295 without DAC. That is going to be your short acting one that lasts, I think, 15 to 30 minutes. That's one that you're going to take, say, 3 to 5 times a day in a fasted state before a meal. You then also have CJC 1295 with DAC. DAC standing for drug affinity complex. It's kind of almost the way like an ester on a steroid works by extending the half-life of the drug. This one has like a 5 to 7 day half-life, I think, if I remember correctly. This is one you can get away with shooting 2 to 3 times a week, maybe even less. There's obviously going to be a little bit of a difference in the way they work with massively different half-lives. The longer half-life is going to give you a bit more of a consistent bleed, whereas the shorter half-life one is going to be a more powerful pulse. Next one, there are others in that class as well. They're the two main ones, I believe. Sermorelin has a very small amount of action there as well. And I also do believe that the oral MK677 has a very small amount of its action through the GHRH pathway. The next class of drugs is the growth hormone releasing peptides, or GHRPs. Your GHRP2, GHRP6, hexarelin, ipamorelin, MK677 works mostly through this pathway. Probably missing some. Again, I think sermorelin is also GHRP.
I think there's enough options there, to be fair, though, for someone to choose one, yeah.
main thing you're looking at there that's going to be different is appetites that comes with the GHRP portion. Some of them cause profound appetite increases, some of them less so.
Like MK, for example.
Yeah, MK causes profound and that's prolonged. The other ones are all shorter acting analogs, so it's more of an acute appetite increase, like you will be hungry for that meal when it wears off. So GHRP2 and GHRP6 will both make you quite hungry, 6 more so than the 2. Ipamorelin would be the one that you would tend to use in like a dieting situation or pre-bed. It's going to have the lowest impact on.
Right, okay. And then the other things you mentioned were the choline, so things like alpha GPC, things like that can help as well, taking them.
And sleep. Getting good sleep and insulin levels as well. You're going to want to make sure when you're using these peptides, especially the fast-acting ones, that you're doing so at a time when insulin is low. You're not going to want to take them half an hour after a high carbohydrate meal when your insulin's at its highest.
Right, okay, yeah. So one of the other things that I want to mention while we're here is as we finish up, basically, is the peptide testing. So you and me had spoken about this earlier. There's a couple of different ways to go about it, but I just wanted to touch on it because it came up. And we're talking about peptides. So, for example, if you want those tested, I was made aware of a company called Fenric. I did send them to you. As far as I could really tell, I think they're like partnershiped with Janashik anyway. So, or like that's what someone had pointed out to me. So it sounds like maybe they're even just like an Australian company partnered with Janashik to try to find a way to like get people's Australian business to just ship it away anyway on their own. They're playing like a middleman, maybe. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not so sure.
A lot of it just says free testing anyway, because you can just see other people's. So like you can see other people, so like someone can go on there and say, oh, this is the company I get my peptides from. And someone sent samples to them, and then so I'm going to go look and see what those samples said. But just keep in mind that doesn't always necessarily mean that just because you're getting them from the same company that you're getting the same quality of sample, or same quality peptide, sorry.
Yeah. And the other thing to remember is the person that you buy your peptide off, unless you're buying it from China, or even in most cases then, is not the first vendor. And most of the time they'll have multiple suppliers. So they could have 2 RT10s, retatrutide 10s. One's come from one factory, one's come from another. One could be good, one could be shit. Same company.
One could have double, one could have half. So, yeah, that's part of it as well. But one of the things that we mentioned that, so Janashek, if you are listening to this bit or whatever and you want to get your peptides tested, Janashek is probably the best way to go about it currently. So just go to their website and then basically it's expensive and it'll take a while and all that sort of stuff, but that's the way to go about it. Other than that, from what I have been informed about from people who do know, there is only a few other ways to go about it. I mean, Pet Test Australia, there is an option at the moment, but like, that's Janashik is the one that's been doing it for a while, and it's not that Pet Test isn't, but things are probably moving in that area and may change in the future and things.
See, the only thing with the Pet Test one is it will be used as data, so you getting your stuff tested through Pet Test Australia will be contributing to some of the research that people like Tim Peterkowski and whatnot are involved in. And the turnaround time, I'm going to imagine, is going to be significantly quicker than having it sent off overseas to wait for results as well.
This is a good point, yeah. I want to make it clear that I wasn't moving away from Pet Test, more so just that either of them are an option, and you will just have to consider them when it comes down to doing them, looking at the price and what works for you and time and all that sort of stuff like that. Just make your own decision, but what I'm saying is go and do either of them if that's how you want to test it. And just be aware of if there's a company like Fenric or whatever, there's nothing wrong with them either. But just, when you are looking at these certain ones and they're typing free on everything, the point I'm trying to get across to you is it is expensive. So if anything is telling you like, oh, we'll test your peptides for free, chances are they're not legitimate or there's more to it, which I think what Fenric do is basically say free for other people's, and you can see other people's results. And then it's like, you've got to sign up for a membership. And then once you actually probably try to send your peptide to them, that's when all the money, like the cost will come into it. So yeah, and as Connor mentioned, they are US as well, and if they're partnering with Janashik, that is US as well. Pet Test Australia is obviously doing it in Australia. So
I don't think Janashik's US.
Not US, sorry, Czech Republic.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but overseas, sorry, is the point that I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So that's why you're going to get longer turnaround times, and everything's in US as well, so it's confusing because it'll add up for sure. But that's pretty much it. I just wanted to mention that because we talked about peptides. That's probably a longer conversation, but I had it today, and I kind of want these podcasts to work as like an almost like current dialogue for like what's going on. So when me and Connor talk about something or something comes up or something's relevant, we'll try and throw it in these things. We're not going to make every single podcast about Reddit, for example, but like, things that are relevant, we're going to talk. That's pretty much it from me. You all good?
All good, yeah. Probably just reiterate that as long as Chinese GH is available, that is my recommendation. But that is, your worst case scenario backup option.
I'll keep that in mind. I got plenty of GH at the moment now. So, I know. Good. I got tons of it. Yeah, I'll send you some. It's all good.
Oh, sweet.
I'm Jacob Harris.
I'm Connor Walsh.
This has been All or Nothing. We'll see you next week.